So, what if the biggest threats to your construction project aren't in the blueprints or even the budget, but in the weather forecast? Today, we're diving into climate risk. We're going to see how it's gone from being a footnote in a report to something that's at the absolute heart of successful project delivery. Let's get into it. Just imagine this for a second. You've got a brand new coastal high rise. It's engineered to perfection. Every detail is accounted for. But what happens in 10 years when the storm of the century starts happening every other year? All of a sudden, that perfect project is a massive liability. And you know what? This is the new reality of construction. A project's success isn't just about how strong it is today, but how resilient it is for all the decades to come. Okay, so how do we even start to wrap our heads around this huge issue? Well, it turns out that climate risk in construction, it really boils down to two key threats. Think of them as two sides of the same coin that every single project has to consider now. At its core, when we talk about assessing climate risk, we're really just asking one simple but incredibly powerful question. Can this project perform? Can it perform safely, legally, financially, and operationally, not just on the day we cut the ribbon, but for its entire lifespan, in a climate that is constantly changing? This is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of the problem. On one hand, you've got the super obvious physical risks, right? Floods, heat waves, massive storms that can literally damage a project. But on the other hand, we have the more subtle but honestly just as dangerous transition risks. Think of these as the human response to climate change. We're talking about new carbon taxes, investors who suddenly demand much higher ESG standards, or insurance companies that just flat out refuse to cover projects in high-risk zones. A project can be built like an absolute fortress, but if it doesn't comply with these new rules and expectations, it can become worthless almost overnight. And that brings us to a really crucial point. This is not some abstract problem for the future. No way. It is an immediate commercial issue that hits your budget, your safety record, and your project schedule right here, right now. Ignoring climate risk isn't just irresponsible, it is incredibly expensive. Just think about it. A construction site where the temporary drainage, which was designed for, say, 20th century rainstorms, gets totally overwhelmed by a 21st century downpour. Boom, the project is set back for weeks. Or picture a crew of workers whose productivity just grinds to a halt during a record-shattering heat wave. These are not hypotheticals anymore. They are the new everyday reality of construction, and every single one of them has a direct, painful impact on the bottom line. So, the most important point is this. Thinking about climate risk is not about ticking a box on a form. It's a fundamental part of protecting your investment. It safeguards literally everything, from the daily schedule and worker safety, all the way to the asset's final performance and its long-term profitability. But here's the thing. A climate risk assessment isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. A project's weak spots change, and they change dramatically from the drawing board to the construction site to the finished building. So let's take a closer look at how these risks actually evolve over time. This slide really drives home how much the risks can change. In the planning phase, you're thinking big picture stuff. Is this site in a future floodplain? Will the materials we've picked be able to stand up to extreme heat in 20 years? And then, once the building is up and running, you're worried about things like rising energy costs and more frequent maintenance. But it's that middle column, the construction phase, that is the real minefield. That's where a sudden heat wave can bring all work to a standstill, or a flash flood can turn your brand new excavation into a giant swimming pool. Okay, so we know the risks are real, and we know they change depending on the project phase. But how do you actually get a handle on them? Thankfully, there's a really structured method that can turn these big, scary, abstract threats into a clear, manageable plan. I like to think of this as a 7-step recipe for resilience. First, you gather your ingredients. What exactly are you building and where? Then you identify the potential hazards. Is this place prone to heat waves or floods or something else? Next, you figure out how vulnerable your project is to those things, like what happens if the power goes out for 3 days. Then you calculate the consequences. And after you've prioritized the biggest risks, you come up with a real plan to control them. See? It's a simple, logical process that takes you from just worrying about a problem to actively solving it. Because that's what this is all about. Taking action. An assessment is only as good as the solutions it leads to. So let's look at some of the most common risks out there and the practical, real-world things we can do to control them. Flooding is easily one of the most immediate and disruptive physical risks on any construction site. It's not just about, water getting in, it's about what that water does to your schedule, to your expensive equipment, and most importantly, to your people. So, what do we do? Well, the solutions are pretty direct and they're really effective. You raise sensitive equipment like your generators way above the expected flood levels. You design your drainage systems using future rainfall projections, not just historical data from 50 years ago. You make sure you have emergency pumps ready to go, and you absolutely make sure critical materials are not stored in low-lying areas. The goal here isn't just to stay dry, it's to prevent that water from causing a delay, a safety incident, or an environmental disaster. Next up is extreme heat. This is a massive risk for both people and productivity, especially in hotter regions of the world. And it impacts everything from worker health and equipment performance to the actual quality of the concrete you're pouring. The controls here are a mix of smart planning and, compassion. We're talking about things like mandatory work rest schedules that are based on real-time heat conditions, providing shaded rest areas and plenty of cool water, and empowering supervisors to stop work if it becomes unsafe. For any construction company out there, this is both a human imperative and a commercial necessity. You have to do it. And look, the solutions do not stop there. True long-term resilience means thinking about everything. Selecting materials that can actually withstand future heat and humidity, managing groundwater risks during excavation, and even making sure your entire supply chain can handle climate disruptions. It's a whole comprehensive approach. All of this, the risks, the assessments, the solutions, it all points to a fundamental shift in what it actually means to deliver a successful project today. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? The old question was, can we build it? But the new question is, can we build it to last? It is a subtle shift in wording, but it's a profound shift in thinking, and it's right at the heart of what it means to be a responsible builder in the 21st century. So what's the bottom line? In the world of construction, climate change is no longer a footnote. It's the headline. The companies that are going to thrive in this new environment won't be the ones with the biggest budgets or the flashiest technology. Nope. They'll be the ones who are the most prepared. And in the face of a changing climate, preparation isn't just good business, it is the only way to build a future that's actually meant to last.